Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about a saint whose life was marked by mystery suffering and miraculous grace, a man who bore the wounds of Christ on his own body, who spent long hours in the confessional, and who once said, "Pray, hope, and don't worry. Worry is useless. God is merciful and will hear your prayer." This is the story of Saint Padre Pio. Padre Pio was born as Francesco Forgione in 1887 in the small Italian town of Pietrelcina. From a young age, he was deeply spiritual. He often spoke with Jesus and Mary, saw angels, and had visions that most of us can't even imagine. By the time he was 5, he had already decided to dedicate his life to God. When he joined the Capuchin Franciscans at 15, he took the name Pio in honor of Pope Pius I. He lived a life of intense prayer, fasting, and penance. But he also suffered greatly from poor health, temptations, and spiritual battles. The devil often attacked him with terrifying visions and even physical blows. Yet Pio stood firm in faith. One of the most astonishing events of his life happened in 1918. When Padre Pio was praying before a crucifix after Mass. Suddenly, he received the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, in his hands, feet, and side. These wounds bled continuously for 50 years, and doctors could not explain them. They were painful, but he never showed them off. In fact, Padre Pio tried to hide his wounds with gloves or sleeves, not because he was ashamed, but because he didn't want attention. He would say, "I only want to be a poor friar who prays," but people couldn't help but notice. Word spread quickly. Crowds began to visit him not just for the miracles, but for his wisdom, confessions, and spiritual direction. Padre Pio had the gift of reading souls. When someone came to confession, he often knew their sins before they said a word. He could see the truth of the heart, not to judge, but to heal. People would wait for hours, sometimes days, just to confess to him. He could also bilocate being seen into places at once. Soldiers claimed he appeared to them on the battlefield. Others saw him in visions while he was physically in his monastery. But what makes Padre Pio so remarkable is not just the supernatural, it is how humble and obedient he was. When the Vatican restricted his public ministry, forbidding him to say public Mass or hear confessions for a time, he obeyed silently, never complaining, never rebelling. He trusted God more than his own comfort. He once said, "It is under the cross that one learns to love." For Padre Pio, the cross wasn't a symbol, it was a reality. His body suffered. His soul battled. Yet he offered everything, every pain, every humiliation, every drop of blood for the love of souls. He carried thousands of people in his heart, spiritual children who wrote to him, visited him, or simply asked for his intercession. He would say, "I will stand at the gates of paradise until all my spiritual children have entered." He founded a hospital near his monastery called the Home for the Relief of Suffering, combining modern medicine with deep compassion. It still operates today, a place of healing inspired by his vision of mercy. Padre Pio died on September 23, 1968, at the age of 81. His last words were simple, but full of meaning. Jesus, Mary. Tens of thousands attended his funeral. Even after death, miracles continued. Healings, conversions, and spiritual graces poured out from his intercession. In 2002, he was canonized by Pope John Paul II, who had once visited him decades earlier as a young priest. And what can we learn from Saint Padre Pio today? We live in a world full of anxiety, distractions, and spiritual noise. Padre Pio reminds us to return to the basics: prayer, trust in God, humble obedience, the power of confession, love of the Eucharist, and offering our suffering for the good of others. He reminds us that holiness is not about being perfect, but about letting God be everything. So when you feel afraid, when life feels heavy, when prayer seems dry, remember his most famous words: pray, hope, and don't worry. Let's end with a short prayer inspired by him. Saint Padre Pio, you bore the wounds of Christ and the sorrows of so many. Help us to trust like you did, to suffer with peace, and to never stop loving the cross. Intercede for us that we may become who God created us to be. Amen. Thank you for watching. If this video inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And let us know in the comments, which saint should we talk about next? See you in the next video. God bless you.